Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and right here in WrestleRant, I break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network, and all June long, we're breaking down all June forgotten pay-per-view events, including Capital Punishment, Fatal 4-Way, and today we're talking about The Bash from 2009. Now, technically, like I talked about in my last video, The Bash, for whatever reason, is not considered a Great American Bash pay-per-view. It kind of is. They refer to it as a Great American Bash pay-per-view during the course of the show, the commentators, that is. But on the section on WWE.com, it's not included under those events. WCW, WWE, whatever. It's just its own event from 2009 called The Bash. So they shortened the name for whatever reason. Why? I have no idea. Maybe Vince hates WCW. Otherwise, why wouldn't he have done it sooner? I really have no idea. But it's not like it matters anyway. The pay-per-view was discontinued after 2009. And watching this event, it's not hard to see why. I mean, I love the Great American Bash name. I would love to see it brought back. I think it was brought back once for an episode of SmackDown that you can watch in the network from 2012, like the 4th of July Bash or whatever. But other than that, it's really been, largely done away with, unfortunately, but it was a great show consistently up until this year. So anyway, The Bash 2009 kicking off with a Scramble match. You don't hear that too often for the ECW Championship, including the champion Tommy Dreamer, Christian, Mark Henry, Finlay, and Jack Swagger. So the only 4 Scramble matches to be held, the first 3, of course, happening at the debut of the show in Unforgiven 2008, which I talked about back in September. If you want to check out the review of that show, my thoughts on the Scramble match on the whole. But basically, I liked it. Even watching this match back, it really reminded me how cool of a concept this was. It was very confusing at times. They didn't really explain the rules too well, because I know the commentators would say, Mark Henry is the new ECW champion. Well, technically he wasn't. They had to emphasize he was the interim ECW champion and not officially the ECW champion. Like when Brian Kendrick pinned Jeff Hardy or whatever at Unforgiven 2008 to become the quote-unquote WWE champion, he is not in the record books, recognized as a WWE champion. It was just for the match, and it's not official until the bell rings and the match is over, and the last person to get a pinfall or submission victory is the champion, if that makes sense. So they never really explained that too well. Maybe that's why the match met its demise, but I always liked the Scramble match, and watching this match back, I had never seen, again, interestingly enough, and I've talked about this before, although this was kind of like right when I started watching in April of 2008, this is June of 2009, I had never seen this show before. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing in that I don't know if I never really felt the desire to go out of my way to watch this show. I have watched, Capital Punishment I watched live for the first time anyway. Fatal 4-Way, which I'll be talking about in my next video, I actually watched last year. I'm watching it back again to review for WrestleRant. But The Bash I had never seen up until like yesterday when I reviewed it, to review for this, for this video, which is interesting. Because like I said, there really weren't many must-see matches on this show, and the only ones that were must-see I'd already seen before on like past DVDs and stuff. But anyway, getting back to the match itself, the Scramble match of the ECW Championship, I enjoyed it. Towards the end, it was a big fucking clusterfuck of a match with everyone going for pinfalls and submissions, but the hectic atmosphere, and other than like the crowd not really knowing who won until Tommy Dreamer's music played, was kind of confusing. But up until that point, I thought the match was really fun. Again, I don't really know why they did away with the match. Maybe they thought it was too confusing, and it was, but that's kind of on WWE, and they could have done a better job of explaining the rules or making it more clear and whatever, but I thought it was a cool concept. It's really kind of a shame it's been done away with. Maybe we'll see it brought back. This was 7 years ago at this point, the last time we saw the Scramble match. So it's, we've seen matches been brought back in the past after like a decade of not seeing them. So who knows? But anyway, good match to kick off the show for the ECW Championship. Tommy Dreamer still the ECW champion. After that, a mask versus title match for the Intercontinental Championship. Chris Jericho defending against Rey Mysterio. Like I said, the only real must-see match on this show that I had previously seen on Chris Jericho's second DVD, the Road to Jericho DVD, which is great, by the way. This was an amazing match, which really goes without saying for anyone who lived through their great series of matches in 2009 and their awesome feud. Jericho's career resurgence did not stop at the iconic rivalry with Shawn Michaels in 2008. Right after he got drafted to SmackDown in 2009, he set his sights on the Intercontinental Championship and started feuding with Rey Mysterio. And those guys had good matches at Judgment Day, a really good match at Extreme Rules, a couple good matches on Raw and SmackDown, and this was easily their best bout of the entire series. And had Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker never happened, it probably would have been the best match of 2009. Just phenomenal stuff from start to finish from Rey Mysterio and Chris Jericho. And the best part about their matches, and I'm still in the midst of reading Chris Jericho's book, which I've had I bought it like 2 years ago and I still have yet to finish it. I'm just kind of busy. But Jericho talked about it in his book, in that the best part about their matches was not only their awesome chemistry. Jericho and Mysterio have great chemistry with a lot of different people, but their chemistry specifically, their matches felt like sequels. And I've talked about this before. I talked about it even just recently as when I talked about Kevin Owens versus John Cena and Money in the Bank 2015. That match felt like a sequel. And in my opinion, there's a distinct difference between a rematch and a sequel. A sequel takes parts and sequences from the previous encounter and plays off of those instead of repeating those same spots, repeating the same story because it worked the first time, let's do it again. They technically did do that, but they would take spots from their past pay-per-view matches and then add to it. They would innovate. They would originate. And it was made for a great, excellent, exceptional, very entertaining encounter. That's a lot of adjectives for one match, but it really does deserve the praise I'm giving it. It really was a great match. So in the end, Jericho, doing the same thing that he did at Extreme Rules, went for Mysterio's mask. He ripped it off, only to find that Mysterio had a second mask underneath, which was great, because like I said, had Mysterio lost, he would have had to unmask. So Mysterio technically did unmask, but he already had another mask underneath that mask. And then in the end, Mysterio capitalizing on the distraction on the confused Jericho to hit the 619, dropping the dime to score the victory and regain the Intercontinental Championship for the second time. So great match, really, really enjoyable. Like I said, if there's any one match in the show, I know I kind of save this till the end, but I'll say it right now. If there's any one match in the show that's worth checking out, it's this match. Just phenomenal chemistry. And I would well worth recommend checking out all their matches on pay-per-view that year. The Judgment Day match, the Extreme Rules match, and then finishing it off with this epic encounter, because it really was just amazing storytelling and action from start to finish. In a no disqualification match up next, Dolph Ziggler taking on the Great Khali, which they actually produced a video package for, which was a pleasant surprise. This was around the time that Ziggler was kind of getting going as a single star. He had debuted in WWE as Dolph Ziggler. Technically, he had been with the company for multiple years ahead of that, of course, but in 2008, he arrived in December on the Raw brand. He got drafted to SmackDown, had a couple good matches with MVP over the U.S. Championship, and this, to me, was really kind of his breakout time in WWE. The matches with Khali were not must-see by any means, of course, but in the wins that he scored over Khali, via countout, via disqualification, building to a no DQ match, his first singles match on pay-per-view, I thought was great. It was really kind of a way to introduce him to the mid-card of the SmackDown brand before going on to contend for the Intercontinental Championship Night of Champions the following month against Rey Mysterio. So again, the match was kind of throwaway. It was an afterthought in the end because Kane got involved and cost Khali the matchup. And Ziggler picked up a big win over a former world champion, which was, I mean, these days, if he was to beat Khali, it would mean nothing. But at the time, Ziggler was kind of a nobody. He was just kind of making a name for himself as a single star. So a win over a former world champion like Khali really made him look credible, so that was good. The match itself was, like I said, a throwaway afterthought, considering that Kane kind of stole the focus. He made his return. He had disappeared from programming for whatever reason for like a month, 2 months, a month and a half, 2 months, and then he came back during this match to kick off his awful feud with Khali for the summer. That went like 3 or 4 months for whatever reason. So after that, for the WWE Tag Team titles, a triple threat tag team match. Originally, it was supposed to be Carlito and Primo versus the Legacies, Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase. But because Teddy Long was facing pressure from the chairman, Vince McMahon, was on the verge of getting fired or suspended, he had Edge and Jericho incorporated into the contest after Edge said, why am I not on the pay-per-view? Forever, as long as I've been healthy here in WWE, I've been on every single WWE pay-per-view. Why am I not on the card? And Jericho demanded his automatic rematch instantly for the Intercontinental Championship that night after losing it to Rey Mysterio. So Teddy Long, made him a deal. He put them in the tag team title match together. The match itself was good. I mean, it was kind of obvious at that point who was winning, but it was still good anyway. Edge capitalizing on a distracted Carlito to spear him and score the tag team titles for him and Chris Jericho. So the match itself was really not significant at all, but the title win was. So, I mean, this is really common knowledge at this point, and Jericho's talked about it. He talked about it when I interviewed him last year. He talked about it on the Road to Jericho DVD. He's talked about it, I'm sure, on other various platforms as well. So the tag team title win here, which was great, by the way, because it really cleared up the main event scene for SmackDown. Jericho and Edge were taken out of the World Championship picture, out of the mid-card picture, and it allowed guys like Dolph Ziggler to go after the Intercontinental Championship and allowed a guy like CM Punk to kind of rise up in their absence at the top of the card on SmackDown and take that top heel spot in that feud against Jeff Hardy, which I'll get to momentarily. So that was a great decision for those two things. Also, it set in motion the feud between those two going into WrestleMania. So, like I said, it's kind of common knowledge at this point, but the whole deal, the whole long-term plan here with putting these two together was to ultimately have them split up down the line. It was never meant to be Jericho. I mean, they did the whole Jericho thing when Edge got hurt about literally a week or two after this. They did the match on Raw and SmackDown. They did rematches against Carlito and Primo on Raw and SmackDown. Edge and Jericho won, and they retained the titles. And then after that, Edge got hurt a live event or something, so they had to take the titles off of them, or rather off Jericho only, or rather only off Edge, and then Jericho paired up with Big Show. But anyway, though, so the whole long-term plan was to have them reign as champions for probably as long as they did Jericho, up until TLC, until they kind of branched off, did the whole Royal Rumble thing, had one of them win the World Championship, have Edge go babyface. So they ultimately got to that point anyway. And I don't know if it worked out better or worse or whatever, because they ended up having a good feud over on the SmackDown brand when Edge returned in time at the Royal Rumble. So it worked out well, and it resulted in one of my favorite Rumble returns of all time. But it also kind of took away that great pairing that we would have had between Edge and Jericho, which we never ended up getting. Edge retired a year after the feud of the Jericho dissolved. I mean, we kind of got it a little bit in 2010 when Edge went back heel and they both were on the Raw brand. So we kind of got it a little bit now that I think about it, that summer in 2010. But it wasn't the full-fledged tag team as tag team champions that we would have gotten had Edge not gotten hurt in the summer of 2009. But so that moment, this match is significant for kicking that off, or kind of, planting the seeds for the future WrestleMania match that we would have between Edge and Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 26, despite the, the circumstances with Edge getting hurt and whatnot. So after that, for the Women's Championship, Melina defending against Michelle McCool. A good match. The crowd could not have given two shits. They just put no storyline support behind these matches at all. And this was around the time that it was after, of course, the infamous era where it was after the bras and panties matches, but before what we have now. So it was basically just meaningless matches. And we had two women's championships. We had the women's title on SmackDown and the Divas title on Raw, which was ultimately meaningless. I mean, they probably thought they had enough depth in the Divas division on both brands to warrant having two titles, but it really made no sense in the end. And that's why they ended up merging them about a year and a half later. It really just... We had the same matches on Raw and SmackDown between the women every single week, and the only reason that matches would get, feuds would kick off and get triggered and whatever was because of a backstage brawl in the makeup room or something on SmackDown. Or one of them was with, their boyfriend or whatever else it might have been. This match, I think Michelle McCool just won a number one contenders match or whatever. And it was weird, too. The match itself was decent. The only thing real worth noting about it was that Michelle McCool picked up the victory to make history and become the first ever woman to hold both the Divas and Women's Championships. So that was pretty cool. And Mickie James would repeat the feat as well the following month when she won the Divas Championship on Raw at the Night of Champions pay-per-view. But the only thing I had completely forgotten about this show was that Alicia Fox had a pseudo-alliance with Michelle McCool for a month or two on SmackDown, which was probably meant to be the original LayCool. Fox got drafted to Raw in that weird-ass draft they did, right when Trump took over Raw for a week. And they did a Diva trade, and then Fox got traded to SmackDown, or rather to Raw. So that split up that pairing, and then right after that, Michelle McCool got paired to Layla. And that's how LayCool was born, and we were stuck with that for the next 2 years. So I imagine that was the original pairing, was to do McCool and Fox, and for whatever reason, they didn't sense the chemistry, or didn't think it was going to work out. Layla was a much better fit for the role. Fox was just kind of there. She was good, and she's always been a good worker, but it didn't really feel like they had the same chemistry that Michelle McCool and Layla ended up having, all those years later, or rather all those days later, because Fox got drafted literally 2 or 3 days after this pay-per-view took place. Or not traded, or, not drafted, but rather traded in that, like I said, that blockbuster tri-branded trade they did when Trump took over Raw for a week. So after that, for the World Heavyweight Championship, CM Punk defending against Jeff Hardy in a rematch from the Extreme Rules pay-per-view where CM Punk cashed in on Jeff Hardy. So this was in the midst of one of my favorite feuds as a wrestling fan, as a WWE fan dating back to 2008. Just a phenomenal feud, and this was kind of kicking off that feud when Punk cashed in Money in the Bank at Extreme Rules, like I said. But he wasn't a full-fledged heel just yet. He was kind of teetering the line between babyface and heel. He was still facing heels and whatnot, but he was still kind of acting like a dick at the same time and giving Jeff Hardy a hard time and whatever, saying that, what he did wasn't wrong and he was right. He won the ladder match at WrestleMania to cash in that briefcase at any time, in any place of his choosing. And like he said himself, when he cashed in on Edge a year prior, the crowd went crazy. They went nuts when he cashed in on Edge on Raw. Yet when he cashed in on Jeff Hardy, they booed him. They rejected him. They jeered him because it was Jeff Hardy, the most popular fan favorite in that time in WWE in years. So that was really kind of interesting dynamic, and it really, like I said, kicked off one of the best feuds of mine, and one of my favorite feuds, my favorite feuds as a wrestling fan, and one of the best feuds in recent SmackDown history. So anyway, the match itself was good. They would have better matches down the line, of course. Like I said, Punk was still kind of that tweener, babyface heel, whatever. So the match really wasn't all that it could have been, which was for the better, because they would save their better encounters for Night of Champions, the steel cage match, the TLC match at the SummerSlam pay-per-view, which was phenomenal. But yeah, a really good match here. Better than I thought it would be. I thought it was just going to be a throwaway match because I remembered the finish. I just never saw the match itself. The match was good and kind of gave fans a sneak preview of what to expect later on in their feud. But in the end, it was weird because I think Jeff Hardy hit the swanton on Punk. He got the 1-2-3. The referee did not see CM Punk's foot underneath the rope. So because of that, and it was a legitimate reason to restart the match, the crowd booed. They really wanted to see Jeff Hardy win, so Punk got great heat for that, and he really embraced it in an awesome fashion. So then when the match got restarted, we had CM Punk. He countered the twist of fate, set up Jeff Hardy for the GTS, and when Hardy was trying to get out of it, he elbowed Punk in the eye multiple times. Had he actually done that or not, I have no idea. In storyline I'm talking about here. And then Punk pretended that one of the elbows caught Punk in the eye, caught himself in the eye, and that was reason to stop the match. No, it was not reason to stop the match. I mean, Punk, he was like holding his eye, and he threw a kick, and he thought, in storyline, he was going to hit Hardy, but rather he hit the referee. He thought the referee was Jeff Hardy, so that got Punk disqualified, and the match was thrown out. So it was really a clever way of protecting Punk, keeping the title reign intact, kind of furthering that heel turn. Jeff Hardy and CM Punk brawled afterwards with the crowd, which the crowd went crazy for. And like I said, Jeff Hardy was the ultimate babyface magnet, and that any heel that he worked with was automatically and just vehemently booed by the audience because they love Jeff Hardy that much. Regardless of what Jeff Hardy did, said, or whatever, they always stuck with him because he was that over as a babyface. So just awesome stuff there. Jeff Hardy won the match via DQ, setting up the rematch for the Night of Champions pay-per-view. So after that, we had John Cena versus The Miz in a 5-minute affair. So they had spent months building up Miz as this, I can't even really say threat to John Cena, because he had done the whole, and they devoted a 5-minute video package to this feud, which was cool, and it really kind of step up for Miz, and really a sign of things of what was to come for him. I mean, of course, he wouldn't win the U.S. Championship for another 4 or 5 more months until the end of 2009, but this was his first taste of what it was like to be a single star in Monday Night Raw. But the match did him no favors whatsoever. So they had spent months, like I said, with Miz calling out John Cena, and he wouldn't answer. That was when Cena was feuding with Big Show, and he was injured coming out of Backlash, so Cena could never come out and answer Miz's challenges, and ultimately he did, challenging Miz to a match at the Bash. And Miz barely got in any offense. The match ended with an AA to Miz. Very decisively, he beat him clean in a 5-minute match. What the hell did that do to build up Miz whatsoever? And he was back to losing to Cena the next night. He lost to him the next night. He lost to him before SummerSlam in that lumberjack match, I think it was. That got Miz banned from Raw for a week before he came back and kind of, rejuvenated his image and had a complete makeover with the whole new tights and whatever. New attitude, as Miz said. But really this feud, it was cool to see him, spotlighted at the top of the card on a WWE pay-per-view for the first time. It was not his first singles match on pay-per-view. He had faced Punk for a number of times for the ECW Championship a few years earlier. And I think he was also in the Unforgiven match for the ECW Championship the prior September. That was a multi-man match, but first ever singles match. It was a big fucking deal to be on a WWE pay-per-view with The Miz. But it was really just a holding pattern for John Cena. It was never really meant to elevate The Miz. And ultimately, in the end, like I said, he would get elevated all those months later. But it took many months to kind of build him back up, get his mic skills. He always cut great promos. But it was just that, he really needed a big win. And that wouldn't come until October when he won the U.S. Championship from Kofi Kingston. But in the meantime, he was just kind of toiling away and losing matches to John Cena for no apparent reason. I wouldn't say that Cena buried him, but it really did not do Miz any favors whatsoever. It was a 5-minute throwaway match, which it really should have been a lot more, which, I guess it could not have, we shouldn't have expected more than what we got just because Miz was fresh off his tag team with John Morrison. So for him to come close to even beating John Cena would have been laughable. But I don't know, I just kind of thought it was a throwaway win for John Cena en route to him getting back to the WWE title picture. That was really, like I said, a holding pattern and an excuse to get John Cena on the show rather than a long-term plan to elevate Miz. And the only real funny thing about this match was that this match would later serve as the main event for WrestleMania 27, which was why that show was just as bad as we all remember it as. So we get to the main event, a 3 Stages of Hell match of the WWE Championship. Randy Orton defending against Triple H. And how many pay-per-view matches did these guys have that year? They had the match at WrestleMania. They had the 6-man match, the 6-man tag team match at Backlash, which was good. This match I did not like. I had never seen this match before up until, maybe I had. Actually, I never did. I never saw this match. Like I said, the only match from the show I saw in full was Mysterio versus Jericho. This match I'd never seen before, and I'm glad I didn't. This was a very disappointing match. Only went about 20 minutes for a 3 Stages of Hell match. You would think it's kind of like a best 2 out of 3 falls match, in that it should feel like 3 matches in one. The first match was a standard singles match, I believe. So that went that was over pretty quickly because Triple H got himself DQ'd using the whole heel tactic. So it was I like the switch up of the formula, but even still, so he hits Orton with the sledgehammer to get himself DQ'd, or maybe a chair, I think it was. Yeah, he hit Orton with a chair, got himself DQ'd, followed it up with a pedigree like a minute or 2 later on the floor to score the second victory. So the first 2 matches are out of the way. And anyone who knows me well knows that I just hate the 2 out of 3 falls matches, or matches like this, where the first 2 falls are over in like 5 minutes. The only exception I could feel that I can remember is like Cesaro versus Sami Zayn from NXT, like back in 2013, when like Sami Zayn won in the first like 10 seconds via a fluke. This wasn't a fluke. It was like a 2-minute match. So you're telling me the matches would have been over if the third fall did not exist and we only had the first fall. The match would have been over in 5 minutes. What main event WWE title match is over in 5 minutes? You know what I mean? It just makes no sense to me. And that's why, some people called it boring, but that's why I love Samoa Joe versus Sami Zayn from a couple of months ago in NXT, the 3 stages, not 3 Stages of Hell, but the 2 out of 3 count falls match that went almost like the entire episode, because that felt like 3 matches in one. That was almost like 3 20-minute matches in one match. That's what these kind of matches should feel like. That's kind of the whole purpose. But anyway, so they get to the third fall, the stretcher match, which wasn't that much better. It was easily the best fall, obviously, but not that much better, because Triple H and Orton just don't have good chemistry. Their match at WrestleMania 25 didn't suck, per se. It just wasn't exciting at all, because these guys don't and have never had good chemistry. They just have a long history of having very dull matches on pay-per-view. Their matches in 2004, Unforgiven, boring as all hell from Unforgiven 2004. Royal Rumble 2025, I hope not. The Royal Rumble 05, that I thought it was a last man standing match. Remember that? I remember reviewing that show last year, and I thought it was a last man standing match because the match was so fucking long and boring, but it wasn't. It was just a very long, boring match. And it's just, wow. These guys just don't have any chemistry whatsoever. They had a couple matches in 2008 and 2007. Again, boring fucking matches. This match was no different. So anyway, we had some interference from the Legacy after they had previously kind of left the arena. Ted DiBiase teased tension with Orton. He would come back out and help Orton. Cody Rhodes, same thing. He tried to help get DiBiase and Orton back on the same page, and he would be successful in doing that. He came out, DiBiase came out, Triple H fended off the cavalry, but Orton in the meantime scored the victory, retained the title. Triple H afterwards hit Orton with a sledgehammer and kind of furthered that feud, and that would keep him in the WWE title picture going into the Night of Champions pay-per-view the following month. So that ended the show. Triple H standing tall after knocking down Orton. Orton would get back up, and he was holding the championship high anyway, so that was kind of pointless, but kind of to send the message that WWE's Triple H's WWE title aspirations were not yet over. So that was the Bash 2009. Not a very good show on the whole. It's really hard to recommend the show, but there are parts about it that are worth watching for. So it's kind of hard to say that don't watch the show, or it's completely throwaway, or it's all bad, or whatever. Overall, I would say do not watch the show in full, just because it was kind of a boring 3 hours. It had its moments, like I said. The one match worth watching for is Rey Mysterio versus Jericho. The Triple Threat Tag Team title match isn't worth watching for. The match wasn't great or anything, but it is cool to see Edge and Jericho team up and win the tag team titles. Hardy and Punk had a great angle. We had the non-finish, which was kind of disappointing, but it ultimately served a purpose in the end, in the long haul, and building to that rematch in Night of Champions, which was kind of the whole purpose of this pay-per-view, was building towards the Night of Champions. But that was a great angle too, but all the Raw stuff was kind of boring as shit. Boring as shit. Orton and Triple H was boring. Cena and Miz was a waste of a match. It really should have been more than what it was. Khali and Ziggler served the purpose and it succeeded in what it set out to do in giving Ziggler a nice win. The ECW Scramble match was fun to kick off the show, and the women's match was what it was. So Not an entirely throwaway show, but like I said, I would not recommend watching the show in full, rather just bits and pieces of it, and if only one match, then the Intercontinental Championship match between Rey Mysterio and Chris Jericho, easily one of the best bouts of 2009. So that, folks, is my review of the Bash 2009 as seen on the WWE Network. My next video will be covering the Fatal 4-Way pay-per-view from June 2010. But until then, you guys can follow me on Twitter at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. And right here on YouTube by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. All support is greatly appreciated. So until next time, guys, I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.